second lesson this morning from Ezekiel. And as last Sunday afternoon, when I began to prepare for today, realized that we had in my estimation, a bit of a crisis. We've jumped all the way to chapter 11, which means we've skipped a huge amount of very important content from Ezekiel. And I've got to turn my phone off here, or that's going to go off here. So I'm going to be doing a bit of a bridge for us this morning to get us through some of that content. And this is the reason why. There's two questions that you absolutely, positively have to answer for yourself before you can ever answer them for someone else, specifically someone whom you are offering the evangelical message of Christ to. And that is, first, what am I saved from? And secondly, what am I saved unto? And if you can't answer those for you, you're never going to be able to answer those for somebody else. Does that make sense to you? What am I saved from? What am I saved unto? And so to keep this kind of flowing, because I've got a long way to go and a short time to get there, what are you saved from? First and foremost, what are you saved from is you. It is you. It is you. It is not hell. You are not saved from hell, although that's a consequence of being saved from you. It is not the devil, although that is a consequence of being saved from you. It is not bad times. It is not crisis. It is not turmoil. What you are saved from is you, because you have been given the gift of a free will to then offer back as a praise unto the Lord through the receipt of his Son and the transformation of your life from the fallen estate you have come from to the redeemed estate that is being formed into the kind of person that will not pollute heaven. So from what you are saved, first and foremost, is you. What are you saved unto? An eternity. But it's one of two eternities. It is the eternity forever in the estate of heaven. Because there's another eternity. And that's the consequence of being saved from you. But that's not what you're saved from. You're being saved from you. Okay? So what are you saved from? You. What are you saved unto? The glory of heaven. Now, if you can't answer that for you, you're never going to be able to answer that for somebody else. And most of the people that live in this world who are unredeemed do not even know they're lost. I know there's a lot of conversation. Oh, everybody's searching, everybody's a seeker. And that's not true. There are huge quantities of people that don't even care that they're well fed and well clothed and well provided for, and of what do I need a God for? I've got everything I need. And what I don't, I just go get. And if I don't have it and I can't get it, well, then I just find some way to get around without it. But the idea that I am spiritually lost is not on the forefront of every lost person's mind. So when you go into a lost and unredeemed world to offer the message of salvation, saved from what, is a very, very common entryway into that conversation. They don't see themselves as lost. Now, if you listen to Daniel's sermon this morning, I am hoping that you'll find some continuity between what I prepared for this morning and what Daniel said, because I was floored every time Daniel opened his mouth practically this morning, because I'm right there with you. I mean, where did all that come from? Because I'm right there with you, and I'm not going to try to draw parallels. I'm just going to say, if for any reason you drifted in the sermon this morning, listen to him again. There was a lot of good content there. So in order to do that, in order to kind of reinforce that, Ezekiel is a great place to come to terms with what am I saved from and what am I saved unto. Because there is a judgment upon Israel for the infidelity of their lives. And there is a promise of restoration. Now, the promise of restoration is where our book will take us today. And I'm gonna spend a little bit of time on the promise of restoration here. But it won't do any good to talk about the glory, the glory land as that which awaits us if we are not becoming the kind of people that are prepared to enter that glory land. And we don't become that kind of people until we come to terms with the fact that we are fallen and we are being restored. And we need to remember and give thanks to God for that the mercy that he had to reach out his arm is not too short to save, to reach down his arm and to draw us from the mire of this earth, and keep that word mire in your mind for a moment, unto our salvation. And that's where Ezekiel has taken us in this gap between where we left off last week in chapter 11. Is that Ezekiel, God walks Ezekiel through this ought I have against you, voice of God to Israel. And so to help tie together some of what we talked about last week and what we're talking about this week, I want to talk about a little bit about what happened between 2 and 11 in Ezekiel. Then a pre-exilic prophet, for David, that's a prophet that spoke before the exile. You can tell Mark, you can tell David that. A prophet spoke before the exile, who was warning of these exact same things. So and that being Jeremiah. So as we start this morning, I want to go back into Jeremiah for just a second. Now, this is Jeremiah speaking to Israel before the exile. Now, this is before anybody even thought. It's easy for us to think, oh, there was an exile, there was a time before the exile, a time after the exile. They don't know this is coming. You got to put your sandals on here for a minute. You got to step into Israel at a time where Jeremiah is speaking to really capture what Jeremiah is saying. They don't know that they're about to be overrun, that they're about to be hauled off in 3 sequential deportations into the realm of Babylon, that their sovereignty will be robbed from them, that everything that they believe is of value to them is about to be taken away from them. And as Jeremiah speaks to Israel, Israel speaks back. And I am in Jeremiah 44, verse 16. We will not listen to the message you've spoken to us in the name of the Lord. We will certainly do everything we said we would. We will burn incense to the Queen of Heaven, and we will pour out drink offerings to her, just as our fathers did, and our kings and our officials did in the towns of Judah and in the streets of Jerusalem. At that time we had plenty of food, and we were well fed and suffered no harm. Hold your finger there for a second, and we're going to go back to Jeremiah also, chapter 7. Now I'm going to start in 15. This is God speaking. I will thrust you out of my presence, just as I did all of your brothers and people of Ephraim. So do not pray for these people, nor offer any clear petition for them. Do not plead with me, for I will not listen to you. Do you not see what they are doing in the towns of Judah and the streets of Jerusalem? The children gather wood, the fathers light the fire, and the women bake the bread, and make cakes of bread for the Queen of Heaven. They pour out drink offerings to other gods. They provoke me to anger, but I am the one that they are provoking, declares the Lord. Just to tie back just for a little bit, and we're going to step into Ezekiel here in a moment to kind of to close the door on this part of it. Israel doesn't know they're going into captivity. They're living very comfortably. In fact, they give their own definition of how they're living comfortably beneath their religion. And he says, at that time we had plenty of food and we were well off and suffered no harm. They felt that because they had plenty of food, they lived in their paneled houses, they were well off, they were not at war, they suffered no harm, that they must be doing it all right. Everything must be good. We must be living in one accord with God. We're fine. And so we're not going to change our ways. And what are our ways? Well, we're pouring out drink offerings. And we're worshiping the Queen of Heaven. Now, you remember last week, the Queen of Heaven? By this time, this is in the neighborhood of 600-ish or so BC. By this time, the Queen of Heaven had gone through many machinations. The source of the Queen of Heaven is Semiramis, Queen of Babel, who set herself up as high priestess. This baking of bread, and the whole family's into it. I mean, this is not just like some rogue some rogue activity or something. No, this is culturally ingrained in all of Israel. The whole family gets into it. Let me make sure. Yeah, no, I got it right. The kids go out and gather all the wood. And then the dads go build the fires, and the moms are working, kneading the bread to make the cakes. And specifically, these are raisin cakes The traditional cake that you offer as a sacrificial offering and you eat and worship of the Queen of Heaven is raisin cake. And you also give them out to your friends. It's not that you approve of it yourself, you approve of other people doing it too, if you know the passage from Romans. That's the nature of the idolatrous worship that's going on. And this is what God's speaking through Jeremiah to Israel before they even know that the punishment is coming. The punishment of being overrun and drifted off, taken off into exile. This is normal life. And hey, living this way, we're well provided for. We are safe. We have roof over our head. Everything is great. We're not changing our ways. Everything's fine. And then if we get up to Ezekiel, and this is where I want to just back up just a little bit prior to chapter 11. I'm going to be in chapter 8 here in Ezekiel. This is God speaking to Ezekiel and through Ezekiel to be able to communicate that, again, this I have against you. Now, this is after the exile has begun. This is not the warning that God was giving through Jeremiah to Israel before the exile. This is after the exile has begun. Now, I'm pretty confident that I have the sequence here pretty well established. If I'm wrong about this, I want somebody to correct me. But the first deportation has already happened. Ezekiel, at this point, is still in Jerusalem. And he will go out in the second deportation. And what we're looking at in this area here is between the first and the second deportation for Ezekiel. Okay? Now, and again, if I've got that wrong, I want somebody to correct me, but I believe I've got that right. I won't get this content wrong, though. But I want to put it, I'm attempting to put it into perspective. God takes Ezekiel in a vision and he takes him to the wall of the temple. He says, open up the hole in the wall in that temple. And he opens up the hole in the wall in the temple. He says, what do you see, son of man? What do you see? And what he sees is all of the still in Israel leaders, priests, the people who have now established themselves as leaders after the first round of leaders have gone. And what are they doing? Oh, they're engaged in all kinds of odd idolatry. In fact, they have inside the temple, they have begun to put all of the icons and the images and the carvings of all of these sacred creatures to this foreign idolatrous worship that Israel has embraced, that Jeremiah was saying don't, and they said, no, we won't listen to you because everything was fine when we do this. And so now God opens up leads Ezekiel to the temple, opens up a wall in the temple, and says, what do you see? And there by firelight is the most grotesque and obscene worship inside the temple of the Lord. And please make that an operative phrase in your mind. This didn't happen outside. This didn't happen on the outside of the walls or in some kind of sacred hilltop ceremony somewhere or buried inside some kind of cave. This is inside the city, inside the temple courts, inside the temple. This foreign idolatrous worship is taking place. And God said, you want to know why we're having this conversation? Here's a good start. And then he'll go on to say, have you seen what the elders of the house of Israel are doing in the darkness? Each at the shrine of his own idol. They say to the Lord, the eyes of the Lord do not see us. The Lord has forsaken this land. Their position is that God has forsaken them. Now, I'll ask you really quick, just respond. Who's forsaken who here? It doesn't take, it's not rocket science. Their position is God's forsaken us. You see how twisted this becomes when the world begins to infect the church. When the ways of the world infect the worship of God, the sacred worship of God in the temple, that the mind gets twisted, and all of a sudden we think God's forsaken us. But it's okay, because if we do this, we're safe, secure, fat, and happy. We're living fine. Everything's okay. Yeah, there's little stuff going on from time to time, but largely my 401k is doing pretty good, so I'm all right. Then he brought me to the entrance of the north gate of the house of the Lord, and I saw the women sitting there, mourning Tammuz. And he said to me, do you see this, son of man? Do you see these things? And there are more detestable things than this. Now, we talked about Tammuz last week. Do you see the linkages here? Do you see where this all fits together? That this ancient worship from Babel has made it through its way through history, through multiple machinations, some fractured, some intact. But at this point, the 40-day mourning of Tammuz is being worshipped at which gate? The north gate to the temple. This ancient worship of the mourning of the loss of the son, supposed claimed resurrection of the son, of this mother-child worship of Semiramis and Tammuz, for which the mourning involved exchanging and baking of raisin cakes, for which the whole family is involved in. Do you see how thoroughly impregnated this culture is? And from God's voice, and this I have against you. When you ask, what am I saved from? How much influence do you read specifically in this text about in walks Lucifer and beguiles Brad? You don't. It's not there. You're not blaming Lucifer. It's you, Israel. You are being saved from you because you are the ones who made these decisions. You are the ones who made these commitments. You are the ones who have exchanged the ways and means of the world and all of its idolatry. And more so, bring it right into the church and supplant the sacred worship of God with this idolatry right in front of God, and then have the depraved mind to say, oh, but, God's left us. And so this is okay. And then we know that it's okay because, hey, we're doing okay. We're living happy. We're living fine. You see how the deception also reinforces? This is God walking in personally to the lives of these people, pointing out what we have no idea, which we do not see. We are so far gone down this path, so far self-deceived in this path, that we don't even know the right questions to ask anymore. And even when a prophet steps into our life and says, this is of high concern, no, we have perfectly good reason to believe that we're on the right track. Because my 401k is doing good, my house is locked overnight, there's gas in my car, food on my table, and I'm feeling pretty good about myself. And yet, the house of the Lord has been totally ransacked. All of its resources have been taken. Remember where we are. We're between the first and the second deportation. First deportation, it wasn't just the people who left. It's all the really great stuff, too. All of the wealth, all of the riches. You'll see later that no, it is here. I'm sorry, it was in a different. I read so much, I forget kind of some of the sequence of where this. So let's step in now to 11. Now God says, not in spite of all of this, because of His sovereignty and His love and His care for His people, specifically Israel, in the broader sense, those made in His likeness and image, from whom which this of our own idolatry He's redeeming. He'll step in and say, no, there is going to be a restoration. So I'm going to read chapter 11, and I'm going to take all of chapter 11 in order to help get the broader picture here. Spirit of the Lord lifted me up and brought me to the gate, to the house of the Lord that faces the east. If you know the temple, the eastern gate, that's the gate right on axis with the front of the temple. Before you is the altar. Right behind the altar is the great sea. Behind the great sea is the steps up between the two bronze pillars. Gateway into the court of the priest and into the holiest of holies. So that's the axis that we're on when God lifts Ezekiel up and takes him. Then the Spirit of the Lord lifted me up and brought me to the gate of the house that faces the east. The gate of the house of the Lord that faces the east. There at the entrance to the gate were 25 men, and I saw among them Jahaziah, son of Azur, and Pleth, son of Bethiah, and leaders of the people. And remember, the leaders of the people, this is just this is like the next generation of leaders, because the original leaders are deported already. So this is what leadership loves: a vacuum. As soon as that vacuum happens, New people step up and they assume the position of leadership. The Lord said to me, Son of man, these are the men who are plotting evil and giving wicked advice to this city. They say, will it not be soon time to build houses? The city is a cooking pot, and we are the meat. Therefore prophesy against them. Prophesy, Son of man. Then the Spirit of the Lord came upon me, and he told me to say, this is what the Lord says. That is what you are saying, O house of Israel. But I know what's going through your mind. You have killed many people in the city and filled its streets with the dead. Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says. The bodies you have thrown here are the meat of this city, and this city is the pot. But I will drive you out of it. You fear the sword, and the sword is what I will bring against you, declares the sovereign Lord. I will drive you out of the city and hand you over to the foreigners and inflict punishment upon you. You will fall by the sword, and I will execute judgment on you at the borders of Israel. And then you will know that I am the Lord. This city will not be a pot for you, nor will you be the meat in it. I will execute judgment on you and the borders of Israel. And you will know that I am the Lord, for you have not followed my decrees, nor kept my laws, but have conformed to the standards of the nations around you. Now, as I was prophesying, Palanth, son of Ahai, died. He fell face down, crying out in a loud voice, sovereign Lord, will you completely destroy the remnant of Israel? The word of the Lord came to me, Son of man, your brothers who are your blood relatives, and the whole house of Israel are those of whom the people of Jerusalem have said, they are far away from the Lord. This land was given to us in our possession. Therefore say, this is what the sovereign Lord says, although I sent them far away among the nations and scattered them among the countries, yet for a little while I have been a sanctuary for them in the country where they have gone. Therefore say this is what the sovereign Lord says, I will gather you from the nations and bring you back from the countries where you have been scattered, and I will give you back the land of Israel again. They will return to it and remove all the vile images and detestable idols. I will give them an undivided heart and put a new spirit in them. I will remove from them their hearts of stone and give them a heart of flesh, and they will follow my decrees and be careful to keep my laws, and they will be my people, and I will be their God. But as for those whose hearts are devoted to their vile images and detestable idols, I will bring down upon their own heads what they have done, declares the sovereign Lord. Then the cherubim with the wheels beside them spread their wings, and the glory of the Lord of Israel above them. The glory of the Lord went up from the city and stopped above the mountain in the east. The Spirit lifted me up and brought me to the exiles of Babylon, in the vision given by the Spirit of the Lord. Then the vision I had Then the vision I had seen went up from me, and I told the exiles everything the Lord had showed me. So, if you like the sweet rather than the savory, you kind of gravitated to that, kind of about that 2/3 mark, where God's talking about the restoration, and that restoration is to come. But let's walk through what Ezekiel is saying here. So we walk through these men at the front end of the north gate. These are the leaders, and remember plenty, because he's going to come back to it. And it says, these are the men plotting evil, giving wicked advice to the city. They say, will it not soon be time to build houses? Now remember that we're between the first and the second deportation, and what they think in Israel, and specifically in Jerusalem, is it's done. Okay, so like the Babylon's come in and they've taken what they think they're entitled to. We made it. We're good. They're gone. We're still here. We're surviving. Yes, the city is in pretty significant ruins here. Yes, our temple is robbed, but I'm still here. I'm still standing. I'm still good. And so it's time to rebuild. What they don't know is that there's going to be a second siege and a second deportation, and a third siege and a third deportation that's going to leave that city so exposed that the beasts of the field will roam and devour many who remain in the city. The helpless, the broken, the infirm, the handicapped, the crippled. The people who cannot tend for themselves, they're going to end up being exposed significantly by such a depreciated and depleted security system on that city. It's going to, the way of the world, the natural disasters, the ravenous wolves will come in and have their way. But right now, hey, we're doing good, right? We're all right. Yeah, we made it. It's not so. That is not so. That's why God's calling them to account. Is it time? Soon it will be time to build houses? No, not so quick, you guys. They say, will it not soon to be time to build houses? The city is a cooking pot, and we are the meat. Now, this is an analogy that they're making, and remember, this is what they're saying to themselves. God's going to call them account for this, because you'll read in a few more verses, as we just did. Oh, this is what they say. I know what you're thinking. This is what Ezekiel's going to say. I get it. I know what you're thinking. You haven't said it out loud to me yet, but I know what you're thinking. So what are they saying? The city is a cooking pot, and we're the meat. There's one way to think of that, to say, oh, well, that's kind of a negative, it's kind of a tough, is that a good thing or is that a bad thing to be thought of as the room that we're sitting as a cooking pot and we're the meat? To me, there's one way to think of that that's kind of bad. That's not what it is. What it is a choice meal. And of the choice meal in that cooking pot, there's some broth, and there's some vegetables, and there's some filler stuff. They're like lentils. Nobody likes lentils. Nobody likes lentils, do they? No. But then there's the meat. The meat is the choice. And that's what they're saying. What they're saying is this city is good now. And as survivors, we're the choice. So if God's hand has truly moved here, what he's done is he's gotten rid of the riffraff. And it's a pretty violent way to do it, but he's gotten rid of the riffraff. And I'm good. I'm the choice. I'm the meat in the cooking pot. That's what they're saying when they say this city is a cooking pot and we are the meat in it. Therefore prophesy against them. Prophesy, Son of Man. And the Spirit of the Lord came upon me and he told me, say this. This is what the Lord said. This is what you are saying, O house of Israel, but I know what's going through your mind. You have killed many people in this city and filled its street with the dead. Now I want you to keep that in mind. The evil inside this city has become so vicious that they're killing their own to advance themselves. It's not rocket science. We see it happen everywhere we go. There are a few murders that aren't done for the purpose of, by executing it, I increase my lot in life in some way or another. Yes, there's some exceptions to that. But most murders, it is to avenge or increase my lot in life in some way. And you have filled the streets with this. With the blood of your own brothers. Fill the streets. Therefore, this is what the sovereign Lord says. The bodies you have thrown here are the meat in this city, and this city is the pot. And I will drive you out. So, God's using the same analogy they used. Oh, you thought you were the choice? No. You are the waste product. I'm driving you out of this city. This city belongs to the unavenged blood of your brothers whom you killed. You want to know what the pot is? The pot's the city. You know what the choice is? Those innocents that you killed. Oh, the city's a pot, all right. And there's choice in it, but it's not you. But that's what you thought. You see the deception that was spoken of in Jeremiah, spoken of earlier in Ezekiel, that we can become so twisted that we can be as vile and vulgar and never know it. We think that we're the choice. We should be very, very aware of this. Who am I first saved from? You fear the sword, and the sword is what I will bring against you, declares the Lord. I will drive you out of this city and hand you over to foreigners and inflict punishment upon you, and you will fall by the sword, and I will execute judgment on you at the borders of Israel. Now, hold that thought, the borders of Israel. You're going to be driven out, but where are you going to be driven? Geographically, northeast, southwest. You're being driven, actually north, into the territories of Babylon. That's where you're being driven north. The River Kibar, it's kind of more of a canal, but anyway, the River Kibar, that's where you're being driven to. That's where the first deportation is. These people are the second deportation. That's where you're headed. You're being driven out. You're being driven north out of this city. You will fall by the sword, and I will execute judgment on you, to the borders of Israel. That's the northern border of Israel. Then you will know that I am the Lord. This city will not be a pot for you, nor will you be the meat in it, See the distinction that God's making. He's going to use their analogy and turn it right back upon themselves to say, oh, you get the pot and the meat thing. You just got the wrong meat. You are not the meat. It should be a shock to them. And you will know that I am Lord, that you have not followed my decrees nor kept my laws, but have conformed to the standards of the nations around you. This is why I wanted to bring in the Jeremiah language. You can't. It's so hard to read like the exilic prophets like Ezekiel, the pre-exilic prophets like Jeremiah, writing Jeremiah and Lamentations, and the post-exilic prophets like Habakkuk and Ezra and Nehemiah, who are prophesying during the restoration. To understand what's going on here, you need to read all three of them. So drawing in from all three of them, and it is my hope and plan, even though I haven't looked ahead, to pull in those post-exilic prophet voices also as we get into the promise of restoration, because they're going to tell us what that restoration looks like. Okay? So, you will know that I am Lord. You have not followed my decrees or kept my laws, but have conformed to the standards of the nations around you. You have welcomed with open arms the ways and means of the world into the temple, into your culture, into your daily lives, all the way down to your men gather the fire, your children gather the firewood, your men build the fire, and your wives are baking cakes to the Queen of Heaven. That's how fully immersed you are in allowing the influence of the world to step into the sanctity of my creation in you. Now, as I was prophesying, Plinth, son of Mahath, died. And when he fell face down, he cried out in a loud voice. Now, this is the voice of Mahath. He was one of the leaders at the North Gate that Ezekiel saw when this started. And he cried out, "Ah, sovereign Lord, will you completely destroy the remnant of Israel?" Who do you think he's talking about? It's the last words out of his mouth. He's falling down to dead, and he cries out, "Will you completely destroy the remnant of Israel?" Now, if you're listening closely to Ezekiel, Ezekiel's talking about who? You. You who are in this city, who have filled its streets with dead bodies, who think you're the choice. He thinks he's talking about himself. I'm the remnant of Israel, and I'm dying here, and oh God, are you going to completely destroy all of us? Well, first, you're not the remnant. I have a remnant, and I'm going to tell you about that in a second, but you're not the remnant. Remember, you're not the meat in the pot. The people you killed, they are the meat in the pot. They are the choice. The unavenged blood of your brothers that you slaughtered in these streets. No, they inherit this. And as we talk about the post-exilic prophets, there are others who inherit this. The Lord came to me, Son of man, your brothers who are your blood relatives, the whole house of Israel, are those of whom the people of Jerusalem said, they are far away from the Lord, and this land was given to us for our possession. What? They're far away. Who's he talking about? Oh, the people that we thought were the unrighteous. The people that we thought separated the profane that were deported and the sacred that are still here. And you said, of those people who have been deported, consequently referring to yourself as those who are still here and not deported, that they're far away. They're obviously the bad people. We're still good because we're still here. And you have said those people are far away, and the Lord has given us this land for our possession. You think you've inherited this? Again, this is detailed over and over and over again how thoroughly deceived these people are. And don't know it. They don't even know the right questions to ask. The temple of the Lord, and so much so that behind walls in the temple, we got creepy creatures all over the wall, each man into his own shrine, bowing down in the temple. Therefore, and this is the first part of the term, because this is the answer to the question. Oh Lord, will you destroy the remnant of Israel? He thinks he's talking about himself. Oh, no, 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 no. I've always got a remnant. I will always retain a remnant of my people. It's a covenant. What part of covenant don't you understand? It's a covenant that I hold. It's a covenant that you broke. But I hold my covenant. I have a remnant. I always hold a remnant because I will always honor my covenant. And the remnant is not you. Therefore say that this is what the sovereign Lord says, although I sent them far away among the nations and scattered them among the countries, yet for a little while I have been their sanctuary. Now that's, if you're still alive, if you're not Philemeth, or however you pronounce his name, if you're not him, then you're still standing there alive and you're still listening to this. And you're saying, oh, you mean the people that are in exile? You are taking care of them in exile? You are their sanctuary? They are the, quote, meat in the pot, the choice? Well, then what does that make us? So, therefore say, this is what the sovereign Lord says, I will gather you from the nations, and I will bring you back from the countries where you have been scattered, and I will give you back the land of Israel again. He's going to take all of those whom we dismissed because they are scattered amongst the nations in exile, and he's bringing them back. But we are going to suffer. We are going to die by the sword. If we go back to verse 9, 10-ish, you fear the sword, you will receive the sword. You have dismissed your brothers into exile, thinking you are the choice meat in the pot. You're not. You have engaged in such a level of depravity. You are the purge. The remnant, for what you thought you were, they're out there and they're coming back. I'll restore. But the restoration is a glorious restoration. They will return and remove all the vile. They will return to it being the city. They will return and remove to it and remove all of its vile images and detestable idols. All that stuff that you all are worshiping right now, all those shrines that you've set up inside the temple of the Lord, all of these detestable practices you've engaged in, this cultural worshiping of the Queen of Heaven. Now they're going to come back and they're going to clean house. All that's coming out. And I will give them an undivided heart and put a new spirit in them. That undivided heart it just cannot be overstated. An undivided heart, a heart that is solely set out, a heart that truly confesses what Jesus said, seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all things will be added unto you. That's not a duplicitous heart. That is an undivided heart. That is first and foremost, the highest priority in my life is the highest governing authority in my life. The highest governing authority in my life has a will, and that will is what I seek, his kingdom. First, at the expense of, at the exclusion of, at the expulsion of anything that would compete with that in my life. That's first. That's what these people are going to do. They're going to come back with an undivided heart. And this is beautiful language because it should be language that you are familiar with experientially. I will remove from them the heart of stone and give them a heart of flesh. They will be born new, born again, restored. Not in the exact same sense, but as a foreshadow of the sense that you know being born again. You know through the redemptive process of Christ's salvation, made alive in you as a born again new creature in God, restored to the one made in the likeness and image of God, that you have a new heart. You don't see the world the way you used to. You don't think the way you used to. You don't laugh at the old jokes you used to. You have a new value system. You may fail probably less than I do, or less frequently than I do, but you will fail as I do at living that conviction. But you will continue to strive to live in this new life, this new order, this restoration of my being. Where that heart of stone that said, oh no, I'm gonna hang tight with this Queen of Heaven thing because that's working for me. Yeah, all this other this Yahweh stuff, Jeremiah, you're talking about, that didn't work for me. This works for me, so I'm gonna stick with that. So I'm not gonna listen to you. And the evidence is, my 401k's fine, I got a fine house, I'm living okay, my food's stable, my doors are locked. I'm cool. It's all right. Now, he says, I'm going to take that whole idea away from you, and I'm going to give you a heart of flesh, a heart that seeks me first. And then they will be careful to follow my decrees and be careful to keep my laws, and they will be my people, and I will be their God. That's that communion, that unveiled communion, that communion that was known first and foremost and best in the Garden of Eden, where there was an unveiled communion between Adam, Eve, and God, where sin had not yet entered into the world, where God knew us fully, we knew him fully, and there was a shared communion between us. Sin destroyed that. Now will bring down on their heads what they have done, declares the Lord. I'm sorry, but as for those whose hearts are devoted to their vile images and detestable idols, I'll bring on their heads what they have done, declares the Lord. This is all the answer to the question by a dying man at his last gasp of his breath saying, will you destroy all of the remnant? The answer is no. I know my remnant. I will keep my remnant. I will honor my side of the covenant. There will be a restoration. The glory will return. And I'm saying the glory will return because of what he's about to say here. Then the glory of the Lord went up. This is verse 23. Then the glory of the Lord went up from within the city and stopped above the mountain on the east of it. If you don't catch exactly what is said there, Elvis has left the building. The glory of the Lord went up. This is what's known in Hebraic language as Ichabod. The glory of the Lord has departed. Now, if you look at the big picture, there was a time a long time ago at Shiloh where the glory of the Lord was there, and the glory of the Lord was there. That's where we first hear the word Ichabod. The glory of the Lord with the ark has been in Israel for a long time. The glory of the Lord has just departed. That utter abandonment for the purpose of making the glory of restoration all that much more vivid for us to see has to happen. And that's the last word that God's going to speak in this particular passage is, in order for the glory of restoration to be as credible and as visible, as understandable as possible, I'm going to leave this place for a while, but I'm coming back. If you remember that response from Jesus to Caiaphas, when Caiaphas asked, "Are you the Lord? Are you the Son of God?" He said, "I am. I am. And you shall see the Son of Man coming on the glory, in his glory, I think." Say it again. Clouds of glory. Yeah. I am your God. I am your judge, and I'm coming back. That's what Jesus is telling Caiaphas when Caiaphas is trying to use the best of his earthly wisdom to determine whether or not he's standing before the living God who created him. And of course, he's so ill-equipped to make that decision, to understand even the answer to that. Jesus tells him, I am your God, I am your judge, and I'm coming back. This is the same point is being made here. For all of us who are going to come back into the kingdom, the dramatic difference is set up by these events by God, which means I got to go. My glory will leave this place, but it will return. And ultimately, that comes in the person of Christ. When a babe is born in Bethlehem, stands before his elders at essentially the date of his manhood, speaks the word of God, begins a ministry at 33, and dies for all the sins of the world. The glory of the Lord does return. We have to close here this morning. Thoughts before we close?
the glory of the Lord has departed many churches, and that's sad. But what seems sadder to me is they don't realize
I'm glad you said that, because I didn't want to actually say that sentence. I'm hoping that everything we did say here this morning that funnels to that very point right there. And why has the glory of the Lord departed? Because we have replaced him. In so many ways and in so many places, we have replaced him in our sanctuary. Other thoughts before we close this morning? Yes, ma'am.
This is not on the lesson, but I just want to say, I would be remiss if I didn't thank Rob Library for all that he does every week with the lesson, getting it out, reporting, and greatly thank you.
That's very kind of you. And yeah, Rob, I don't, maybe not quite frequently enough, but I try to remember to thank Rob on a regular basis for what he does, and do appreciate that, Rob. Other thoughts before we close this morning? I don't know where they're at, but we want to remember them. I'm sorry, they're done? They're done, okay. And we made it through without whatever ruckus can inflate and invade us from upstairs. Jack, could you close us in prayer this morning? Yes, sir.
Dear Lord, we just thank you for the day, and we just thank you for this marvelous study that Todd has taught us this morning. We just thank you for all your mercy and your grace and your love that you show to us today. We just pray for our church in the coming days here. We just pray that the Holy Spirit might meet with us each and every service. We know that nothing we can do can be done except through the Holy Spirit. That we pray for those that come that are lost. The Holy Spirit might quicken their heart and might do so. Pray that you just lead, guide, and bless us through the day. We pray for all these prayers of those that have been mentioned, that you might bless them. We just praise you for who you are and for your faithfulness. And just pray that you will be with us through this week and bring us back to our help. Give us the sin and watch over us through the day.
Amen.
Yeah, one.